committee meeting order. For a roll call, Dan Ruck called and asked to be excused. So he won't be attending this meeting. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. How about our minutes from our August 14th meetings?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All's in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Are there any public comments? We're aware of? No?
Nobody's here.
Any supervisors not seated as committee members? All right, well, the discussion and possible action regarding the outside agencies funding request.
At the risk of being inappropriate, if I'm walking a little funny, it's because I had a fight with a coffee cup this morning. And my left leg was completely irrigated with McDonald's level hot coffee. So,
Oh, well, that was a hell of a lawsuit on that. I didn't know if you could participate with that woman.
I'll just back away. If that's all right. Okay, so if you flip over, Claire, if you could grab our presentation, and there's on the first substantive slide, it says outside agencies. So we've had presentations from the Economic Development Corp, Historical Society, Kinship, Westcap, Fair, Tourism, West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, and a group that we gave some money to last year did not choose to participate this year, the CRA. Maybe to the next slide there, Claire. Yep. So the requests for 2025 are in that the column labeled 2025 request. To the left of that, you can see what we did in 23 and then in 24. And the difference column just shows the difference between the 24 granted and the 25 request. So we got about $43,000, $44,000 more in requests this year. The far column, you'll see the administrator's recommendations in terms of the amounts to send to these agencies. Happy to entertain discussion about those. I know we've got counsel on the line, but what we would be looking for is discussion, and if there's any concerns about the administrator recommendation, some direction there, and then if these look good, we would just be looking for a recommendation to move them forward to the board.
Why is the community referral agency recommending none?
They just chose not to present. They chose not to ask us for money this year. They may come back next year. They, for some reason, felt like a sort of biennial cycle would be better for them. So we can't make them ask us for money. But that's why it's a zero there.
Where does the library fit into this?
So the library is totally separate. A determination was made at a recent meeting to stay at the 95% funding level. So that will be incorporated. So library is not part of this. Did get a call from Supervisor Ruck, and we went over the administrator's recommendation. And Russ, I don't know if he shared any of his thoughts with you or not.
Yeah, he did, but if you remember what they are, I might have to look it up on my phone. You had someone he didn't feel.
Yeah, I believe it was the museum, but I could double check with him on that.
The Tourism Council, I think part of their increase, the requests that they made are they they're trying to get back to the level they were, do we know what they were funded at, say 4 or 5 years ago? Cause I know there was a cut there based on,
Yeah, and my recollection, sir, is that we took 10,000 away from them and gave that 10,000 to the Economic Development Corporation.
Okay.
And so Terry's group had been getting $60,000, and there was some belief that tourism at that time wasn't effectively digitally marketing.
so they're at, if they're at 70,000, they're back to the level they were previously, or at least that.
That would be correct. And if my memory serves, the other thing I might point out is when Administrator Norby and I discussed this, we felt like they were moving in the right direction with a presentation that they provided us with this past year. They have picked up some digital marketing efforts, and they have new leadership. So, you know, one way to look at this is it's an acknowledgement of sort of going in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I'm questioning. I mean, they asked for 30. It looks like we're offering to give them 10.
Correct.
We have to make a move on this, or do we actually have time to? Some thought.
Well, the council may want to weigh in, but you know, this will be part of the administrator's budget recommendation.
He's just gonna put his recommendation in, and then we'll have a chance to change it.
Right. And if there's any concern about the amounts, that might be the best way to go. We have this amount budgeted, and right now we've got a balanced budget. So if there were additional savings, they would go to surplus, or we'd find something else to spend them on, the dollars on. But if you'd like to think about it some more, you'll have another swing at this. You know, when the administrator presents his budget, the initial budget in September, and then again in October.
But we don't have to do anything. This is just part of the budget, period.
Right. And I think you know, this is only my third time, but I believe the idea is that since these are external groups, it would be good to get an endorsement from you know, specifically from this committee. Because we're spending taxpayer money on outfits that aren't part of us.
Recommendation either supporting this or not supporting it.
That's right.
What we're doing is supporting the administrator's recommendations.
Yeah, my recollection is that Supervisor Ruck was recommending a $5,000 increase for the museum.
Decrease, I think.
Decrease, sorry. Yeah, so
60,000.
60,165.
Was he reappropriating that money to any of the others here, or just cutting?
That didn't come up in our discussion anyway. But if you feel strongly about that, that could be a recommendation.
What was his reasoning, as you recall?
I'm not sure that I could do a decent job of
Okay.
recapturing what.
So everything, well, in the other ones. That's the only one of these that are in contention then in reference to his total budget proposal that we've discussed, considering right now, without reason.
I'll point out, and I think most of you are aware of it, but we don't have a choice on West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. That's in statute that they basically bill us back a fraction of their cost based on county population. The rest are discretionary. I will also point out that this is strictly speaking operating expense. So we have capital requests from the Historical Society and from the fair for a number of projects, and we'll look at those in a second. These are just operating costs.
So you're looking for,
And I am recalling one thing about my conversation with Supervisor Ruck. We talked about the fact that this was operating for the museum and that there was sort of wondering if this was really to support the director of the museum. And we think that I think folks think that she's doing an excellent job. But that would, you know, you could look at the position as being a position where fundraising would be part of the role. And I think it was possibly not clear that the county should be funding her salary increase totally. So that's my recollection of the conversation with Mr. Ruck.
However, even if we approve this as presented, he's got his opportunity to challenge that 65,000 at the budget.
Right. And he may do a better job of representing his view than I am.
Right. Yeah.
Didn't we?
I've got it.
Didn't we take 10,000 from the Polk County Tourism and give it to economic development?
That's correct.
So now we're gonna keep economic development. They got that 10,000 more. And now we're gonna give the tourism 10,000 more?
That's correct. That's the recommendation. The administrator and I, when we discussed this, we did ask ourselves whether in the future it would be sensible to look at that $10,000 as being in play. That was not what we did for this year. We left the 10,000 with EDC and increased tourism by 10,000. But I think that's a reasonable question.
Anybody else got any thoughts or comments they'd like to make on it? Want to move it with or without a recommendation?
I think we should move it with a recommendation to approve it as presented. The challenges can be done at the budget hearing. The budget. Total budget request.
So even if we would vote in favor of that, we could speak against it.
Well, I guess that's just a thought, not part of a motion, but
You could direct the administrator to review the outlay. And if, as you know, you could also direct the administrator to reduce or increase a line item in this if you felt like it. I mean, I guess my preference would be to go into next week at the board meeting with numbers that we're comfortable with. And if we could get there today, that would be very good. We're not talking about massive sums of money, but just in terms of keeping things simple, as the budget person, that would be my preference. I think Mo would feel the same way.
Because we did spend almost an hour on 10 chickens in 5 minutes on a $50 million budget a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Well, you know, let's see here, which of these would you consider as the most beneficial financially to the county? I mean, I would say probably Tourism Council and Economic Development.
In my estimation, you'd be correct, sir, economically.
So if putting money into those brings money back to the county, does that make sense to focus on them more so than maybe some of the others? Or consider that money spent as an investment rather than a expenditure?
Yeah, and wasn't there something going on at the Tourism Council where the board felt they weren't representing all the groups. And I think they kind of changed it up and diversified their board more.
I wasn't part of the board during that, but my perception as a citizen wasn't that regarding the Stour Trail plan in Madison or something, and you know, and that has since been so if we've reappropriated the money that was taking away from them, are you're pretty confident they're back at the level they were prior to that?
That's my recollection, sir.
Okay.
I think the reason for the increase was they applied for a grant that they have to have funds matching for. And so this 30,000 increases their budget by like 60,000.
They're probably what? Chief?
They had a matching grant
Okay.
that they applied for. So they're trying to leverage their.
Well, if it's
money to get the
but if it's a
grant.
matching grant, do they need more money to get the full effects of the grant?
I believe so.
I'm not aware of that. May be the case, but I'm not aware of it.
All right, well, we still don't have a motion on the floor, so we're just talking about it. Yeah.
Would it make sense then if with Ruck, you know, with what Dan had suggested, taking 5,000 away from the historical society, would it benefit us to give that to tourism? You know, if they have a matching grant, if we give them 5, do they get an additional 5 somewhere?
I'm not sure where they're at. I think they have a significant fundraising effort going on along with this request.
So just to be clear, the suggestion that's being discussed is to take 5,000 from the museum, the historical society, reduce them to 60,165, increase tourism to 75. Is that the idea?
It's just a thought. I mean, I'm looking at, I guess I didn't hear Dan's reasoning on, you know, taking 5,000 from the historical society's recommendation, but you know, I'm wondering, the tourism council asked for 30,000 more. We gave them 10. Anybody else that asked for more? It looks like we gave them at least half of what they asked for.
We don't understand that reasoning either, because he's not here.
Yeah.
Well, on tourism was the signal that we thought they were going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And with that $10,000. With Historical Society was to signal that the recognition that they're moving in the right direction and try to support the either an increase in wage or in time spent by the director. Those were the thrusts of the thing. And I'm channeling my inner Mo here, but I think it's probably a little less worried about exactly where the dollars fall and more the big picture, that we want to reward what we think is the right direction. And we have penalized in the past when we thought the direction wasn't right. So there's no real penalizing here other than keeping things flat, which I guess in some ways a penalty. But
Well, but we didn't keep anybody flat that made a request for more money.
I was just speaking essentially of inflation.
Someone want to make a recommendation to the administrator?
Could we recommend that could we move to move this to the board or give the recommendation of the total dollar amount, but not the distribution? Then Dan Ruck could have his time to tell us why you think said $5,000 should be I guess that would make him move it to somewhere else. It wouldn't.
Well, I think if folks are in favor of Dan's recommendation to decrease museum by 5,000, it's just a question of whether they're going to put it someplace else. And one idea would be the tourism, or just to decrement the total amount by 5,000. I mean, again, my preference is to go in with a not only amount but a allocation, just to keep things simple at the board meetings.
I'll make a motion to send it to the county board for consideration with the total amount of $331,334. The decrease of $5,000 out of the Polk County Historical Society.
Second,
I'll second that.
any more discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Thank you. So if we could skip a couple of slides, Claire, please. Yep, that's the right one. So, like it's the next slide in your packet. The administrators provisionally approved about $2.7 million of projects for 2025. About 320,000 of those are operating expense related, and the rest are capital. And they're listed here by order of scale. A highway project, Highway B project, finishing that up, grandstand at the fairgrounds. That amount is actually for bleachers. To have a roof over the top would be an additional $500,000, its current estimate. I believe what Mo will be doing is providing the board an option to put a roof on the grandstand. And that would require borrowing more money or spending more money out of the general 500,000, but we're balanced at $600,000 for the grandstand project. It would, of course, not have a roof. Don't want to be misleading on that. There'd be a contribution from the Fair Society, but with the list of these capital and operating expenses, we're balanced. So anything beyond this, like the roof, would require borrowing more money or taking from the general fund. The new financial software, Blackbaud, the company that we get our software from, has been turning features off on the tool we use, making it tougher to keep things going financially here. So we're going to need to replace that system. We think that's going to be about $350,000. I've got an operating request for 3 patrol deputies from the sheriff for about $300,000. Some squads for $156,000. A new skid steer for recycling. And in the administrator's report, I'll be giving you a little bit of update on recycling overall. $80,000, $73,000 to get better imaging capability for the county and land information. I mentioned that the outside agency requests that we looked at were operating. There's this $70,000 tuck point project for the museum. The administrator's recommending that we do that. Power inverters for the towers, $45,000 for the sheriff. Then we've got a few, 3 in a row here of fair-related capital expense. Then a dock, a boat, web application, and some wage increases that fall out from resolutions that the board passed for environmental services back in the late winter, early spring. So that's the total of 2.69 million. The administrator's suggesting that we go forward with these projects. He'll discuss this more fully at the September board meeting. We'll have an opportunity to consider these more fully. We're not looking for any kind of recommendation on these from this committee right now. We're just informing that this is what the list looks like right now. If you wouldn't mind, let's go to the next slide.
Ask a question.
Oh, yeah, please do. Sorry.
The wage adjustment.
Yep,
Zoning tech to zoning specialist.
right.
Is that the newly created position that was supposed to be temporary for the year?
So that's a good question. So, and there were some revenue targets associated with that.
Correct.
And those revenue targets are built into the 25 budget. So there's an expectation that what was, the model that we put forward back in February, whenever it was, will work. So these wages are to support that effort.
We don't have any data on that.
I don't have any data yet, and it may, I think that'd be a good question for Sarah. But, in finance, what we do is we try to take what the board's heard and the promises made and put them into the budget. It's a plan. And we think we've got that here. I guess an open question is always, what do you do if things don't work out? How do you turn things off? I'm guessing that's kind of where you're going. And that would be something that the board could do. I will.
Additional was 100,000 out of this year's budget.
Right. Yes, I think that's real close. Yep. I will point out that the 3 patrol deputies, there's an assumption there that they will be funded at about half level for a few years. But then we'll have to figure out how to keep them paid for or do something different.
So is that 300,000 the half?
Yeah.
So that's just.
That's all in. That's everything they need to be working. So it's not just salaries. So that's been discussed with the sheriff and with Don Burrows. Any more questions about the items on the list? Then we'll switch over and just talk about our proposals in terms of sources. In the administrator's report, I'll provide a little bit more depth on where we are with bonding, but of that 2.7 roughly, about 68% projected to come from bonding, 1.8 million. Our internal loan fund, we're going to draw down by about $470,000. That allows for lumpy purchases, departments to buy and then pay us back over time. 320,000 of those are the operating requests. They'll hit the levy. And then we're planning to take again, I'll speak a little bit more about recycling in the administrator's report, but we're planning to take $80,000 from the recycling fund. So any questions about that?
Is that 80,000 from the recycling fund specifically because of the purchase of the skid steer?
Correct.
Questions, comments? Fun.
Thank you.
Right. Given the administrator's update?
I will. If you're okay, I'm going to sit down for that. Really just yeah, I don't have a slide for you. Just gonna chat if that's okay. Really 2 components. One is the capital improvement plan and bonding, and then recycling. So a couple updates that way. I think you're aware that over the last few years, capital projects have been largely paid for with ARPA funds. All those are now fully committed. To take on capital projects, we have to figure out a different way to pay for them. And we could either spend down the general fund balance, and we're probably about 7 million uncommitted at this point, or we could utilize debt financing. Before my time, in fact, several administrators ago, Administrator Fry put the county on a borrowing program to achieve capital plan. And because of the influx of ARPA funds, we kind of got off that. We can't borrow, if we keep our debt payments to about 2.452 million a year, we don't really have any impact on the levy. So the administrator is recommending that for the projects that you saw up there and any other ones that the board chooses to execute for 2025, that we look at borrowing or bonding. Right now, the rates are pretty favorable for government entities, 4% or less. It allows us to retain the general fund for future needs. So part of the budget that you're looking at involves borrowing. So you'll get more on that at the September meeting. The full board will hear more about that. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the plan. We will be speaking with our investment advisors, our bonding advisors tomorrow. They're giving us a couple of different scenarios, borrowing from about 1.7 to about 2.2 million. The higher number would be to cover an extra project. We're also looking at sort of a finesse move of borrowing some of the money this year, or borrowing the money this year, so we preserve our levy cap. And we can share more with you about that at next month's general government. So we'll probably want to put agenda item on the October General Government Committee meeting about a more thorough discussion of bonding, and we can bring the PMA folks back in if that would be helpful. So that's what I've got in terms of borrowing or bonding for the 2025 budget. In terms of an administrator's report, happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
It's okay, I'll update the committee on recycling. So back, I wasn't at the June meetings because I was at a wedding. But the board, in a committee of the whole format, sort of affirmed the idea of a special charge related to recycling. And Rod Polk has some specifics on it, but it's roughly $30 per improved property in the county. The idea is it'll raise some $700,000 a year. So 2025 is going to be a transition year for recycling. It's almost like a startup year. So it's been run in a particular way. It's going to be run in a new way. So at the October meeting, this committee will see a resolution that kind of sets all that up. And then that resolution will go to the board and to kind of execute the plan. Given where we are in the budget cycle, this all kind of has to happen in that rhythm of a resolution about recycling, and then in October, and then a resolution about the full budget in November. So for 2025, recycling will retain its levy of about $350,000, and it will get that special charge of something like 700 grand. So a reasonable question is, why are we doing that? Why are they essentially getting, 3 times what they would get in a normal year? And it's because we got a box over there that we're building, and we got to fill it with the right stuff to do the work. So the $700,000 that's collected off that special charge in the first year will do one of two things, or both. It'll pay down the recycling fund negative balance. It'll capitalize equipment purchases. So in other words, we got this building that was approved, and we got to get it ready to run. And this transition year allows that to happen. And so we'll spell all this out, or at least the major moving parts, in a resolution for your consideration next month. And then assuming that it passes muster with you, we'll move it on to the board at the October board meeting. That's kind of the rough plan. We're in conversations with our audit groups at CLA about the best way to set this thing up. And we also have some resources with the counties association and with their law firm Atoles that can help us figure out how to set this thing up correctly, so that given that special charge that was affirmed by the full board, we are in a good operating environment and we can effectively capitalize the operation.
Do you recall the number for the equipment purchase? Is it like 1.8 or something?
Yeah, it's in the, it is in that range. And yeah, and
Years, he said.
yeah. And so, we were debating whether to put that equipment in the capital plan that you just saw. But after conversation, it seems like the way we're going to lay this out now makes more sense, so that the funds that are being collected from the service charge go directly toward either paying down the recycling fund, I keep saying phone, recycling fund negative balance, or buying equipment for the place. So there won't be operating dollars laying around without a good purpose. That's what we're trying to avoid, the perception that we're collecting operating dollars. What we're really trying to do is collect capital dollars for this particular year. In subsequent years, remember I said transition year will be different. That's $700,000 from the special charge. We'll have to support operations and capital. That makes sense.
So if the decision is not to fund it through the special charge, does there need to be a resolution to pull it from our general fund for the budget season for 2025? To spend down that 7 million that's unallocated?
That would be an option, absolutely, for sure. And, I was thinking, I know that there's one way we could organize the recycling center that would not allow us to bond for the project. That is the capital improvements so if we set it up a certain way, we can't actually bond. Set it up a different way, we could bond or use general fund. So that's a good question. That would be a consideration for the board, the committee and the board.
Anybody else? All right, what's going with our work plan? Anything? We're on schedule on our work plan?
Already discussed adding that
Right.
resolution for recycling to the October meeting.
All right, agenda items, you had mentioned one.
You'll get a preview of the October budget meeting in this meeting. So we'll have another budget discussion next month.
Anything else? We got one more order of business to conduct.
Important one.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We'll be here all day.
Move to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Stand adjourned at 9.
Okay.
10.